Hi everyone, in this video we'll be going over this script that actually allows you to create some interesting geometry by picking a point along a curve and basically truncating and subdividing this geometry a little bit more. So we don't only do that, we actually also extrude things to make it look a little bit more interesting, and we'll do a base structure along with a subdivided surface. So this is going to be a full-length tutorial. I'll go over all of the steps, and if you do have questions, make sure to let me know. I will add the script for you to download and play around with if you are not able to achieve this. So let me, like I said, let me know if you have any questions, and let's jump right into it. We're gonna need some base geometry. So what I was thinking is there's two different ways to do it. We could either create it a fully parametric like base geometry, or we could kind of draw it out. So I was thinking for this exercise we're just gonna do it fully parametric. That way all we're gonna need is the script to kind of recreate that, and we're not gonna need any to save the model for the geometry. So I'll double click here, and basically I'm gonna put the construction plane up on the side. So I'm going to bring in the YZ plane, and as you can see, when we zoom in here, we have this construction plane that's been put right here. Now I do make sure to have draw full names, draw fancy wires, and then draw icons. That way I'm able to see both the little icon and the entire text. And I think that's the best way to do it, because that way you can kind of see what the input and output is going to be. Okay, so now that we have this, let's go ahead and create our base geometry, which I was thinking it was going to be an arc. So we'll bring in this component, which is going to ask us for a plane, which is exactly what we just did. So we brought in this YZ plane. I'm going to plug that into here, and automatically is going to give us an arc, and it's going to be the radius is going to be 1. So let's also be conscious as to what units we're going to use. So I'm going to go here to units, and I'm going to actually change this to inches and then feet in inches, because I'm kind of used to working in that. So if I want to make this like 10 feet, 10-foot radius, then here under radius I'll say 120. And that way we have like a 20-foot span of a structure. So typically I make these kind of large. That way I can show you how I subdivide the geometry. So okay, we have this, and now we can just easily just extrude this, and that we can use that as our base surface. But quite honestly, you could do you can use an interpolated curve or something, and then sketch it out and extrude that, or there's many other ways to get a base geometry, but it's not really going to matter what surface we use. We can apply that pattern to anything. So I'll go to here, and then I'll go extrude, and then I'll bring in this arc, and now it's going to ask us for a direction. So the direction is going to be perpendicular to the YZ. So I'll go amplitude. So I'll pick this plane as a vector, this as the direction. Now we're going perpendicular to this plane. And for amplitude here, we can bring in a slider. So basically copy this one over, and I just slide it down and hold down Alt to make a quick copy, and then I plug that into the amplitude. And that way I don't have to make a new slider, and we can just use this one to kind of stretch it in and out. So at this point we basically have our base geometry. Here at an angle we have 0 to pi, so we're just doing half, but you can pick exactly what angle you use. Okay, so at this point we're here, and notice sometimes the edges here don't really they don't look that clean. So what I'm going to do is go here to preview mesh quality, and then I'm going to go to high quality. Okay, so now I can use now we can basically take this and subdivide it, But before we do that, let's actually clean this up and make sure that we have everything organized so we can move forward and always know where to come back to update things. So here you could go to panel, or you could double click and go to panel, and this is how I organize my information. I use the panels to write what these sliders are. So this is going to be our structure radius. And this is going to be, so I slide down holding down Alt. I can make this a little bit smaller. And this is going to be structure length. Cool. So now that we have this, we can also pick the angle, but I think that angle is going to be fine. And so I'll take this and group it together. And I'll right click, I'll select this, right click, color, and I make my way down. That way I can kind of organize the information. Okay, so now that we have this, we can go ahead and subdivide it. Now, there are many ways to subdivide a surface. The typical one is going to be isotrim. But if you have the ability to download, I mean, there's other ways to do it also. You could do contours and things like that, but if you have the ability to download Lunchbox, this is going to be a good plugin for Grasshopper that's going to allow for you to have more than one type of subdivision. So I'd like to subdivide it using structure here and then triangle. So I think it's actually going to be this one, triangle panels. So what's cool about this one is it's going to be a little bit different than isotrim, because isotrim you also need to bring in divide domain square. So this one you need 2. With this panel one, you only need this one, but you do need to download this and install it, which it is free, so it's not a big deal. And then once you have this, you're able to see that right away we have that geometry kind of subdivided. So what we can do is actually take this, the plane that we had before, and hide. So do disable preview, and we can kind of hide everything in the back here. That way we're just looking at our new subdivision. So I don't really like the way that it's subdivided, so let's actually decrease the subdivisions. So I created a new slider here of 5, and I'm just playing around with the U divisions. That way I can kind of have a nice pattern, something like this. So this is looking good. Now we can move on to the next portion, which from here there's so many things we could do, but for today's exercise we're going to actually truncate this using picking a point on each one of these patterns, or each one of these kind of segments. So I'll take it kind of slow and show you my thought process as to how to take this and subdivide it. So now that we have these panels, we can see here in the output, we actually have, if we bring in a panel, so let me do that, double click, panel, and then plug this in here, and we see how many we have. So we have a long list of 43 untrimmed surfaces. So what I want to do is just pick one of them. So I want to pick one of these. That way I can do the subdivision that I was thinking. So this is a good way to kind of see what information you have and how it's organized. So this is just organized as a flat list, which is fine. So we'll take this one and we're going to pick just one of them. So to do that, we'll bring in a list item, which is a component that allows you to pick just one of them. So if you don't know how list item works, I do have a short tutorial that goes over how this works. But basically we bring in all those panels into this list, and the index is going to give us automatically an index of 0, but you could cycle through them. So let's say if we go to 5, you can go from you don't have to just pick 0, you could move along and just pick a different one. So list item lets you pick one item out of this entire list. And so we'll do 0, but actually I'll want to do one of these triangles. And what we'll do is we'll actually subdivide this triangle first to see how it works. Then we'll do it to the entire thing. So I'll actually take this and I'll hide the preview. And now we're just looking at one panel. And now this panel, I do want to subdivide it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one and I'm going to go to deconstruct brep. And when I plug in to deconstruct brep, it's going to allow us to pick the faces, the edges, and the vertices. The faces are going to be this plane. The edge is going to be the outer lines, and then the vertices are going to be those points. So we actually want to take these lines and we want to pick a point in one of these lines. So let's see how many edges we have. We'll put a list here, or we'll actually, to know which ones are the edges, we'll actually bring in a curve component and put those edges into that, and then we can hide all of this. That way we can just take a look at the 3 different lines that we have. So we have 3 values. Now at this point, what I want to do is find a point along one of these lines, and this is actually something I learned from someone I tutored. It's going to be a component called point along curve, point on curve. And what this is going to do is actually, it's going to give you a point exactly in the middle of those lines. So you see 0.5, that means that it's going to put a point along each one of these lines, and it's going to do it exactly in the middle. Now if we move this along, we see that we're able to move that point along that curve. So that's what this component is going to be, point on curve. And from here, when I told you that I wanted to do a truncation, which means that we find the midpoint and we subdivide this triangle. So we're going to take this 5, this 0.5 here, and we know that we have these points as an output, so I'll create a polyline. This polyline is going to go through all of these points, but it's actually going to miss one. So we have to make sure here that we go to closed, right click, set boolean to true. The other way to do it is, let's say if you have your boolean set to false, under parameters, input, I think there's a boolean toggle that you can put in here. If it's false, then you can double click it and it switches it to true. But sometimes you don't need to do that because you always want it to be closed. So we right click here, set boolean to true. Just wanted to show you 2 different ways of doing it. Okay, so at this point we have created this, and we know we have this other surface there. So what we're going to do is actually create a surface that goes along there, and that we're going to use a boundary surfaces, plug this into there, and there you have that truncated triangle that we can now bring back the panels. So we can bring back that panel that we had before, and we see that it does work. So what we're going to do is we're going to cycle through the pattern and see if it works, and it does. So that means that instead of doing a list and just picking one item, I'm actually going to delete this and plug in all of the panels, and now we see that the pattern worked. I'm actually going to bring back this pattern also, and as you can see, we have basically created that truncated pattern, and we could always come around and switch this and move this around and kind of create an effect. So if you wanted to animate it or do something like that, this is a way to do it. You can kind of vary this number. So I'll put it here at 0.5 for now. But we do have these planes that are overlapping these panels. So what I am going to do is do a region difference. So we'll go here to, let's see if this works. I haven't tried this one. So if we go to intersect and we go to region, or let's see, physical, surface, let me see if I can find the location for it. So intersect, mathematical, I think this is gonna be, so region here, split brep with brep. So okay, I think it's gonna be boolean, like a brep with brep, or a bool. Oh, it's gonna be here. We're gonna find here that we have solid difference, we have all of these, but we have region difference. So this is the one that I was looking for. Once you have two different regions, you can do a difference. So I can do region difference, curves A. So which one? These curves, and then curves B. These curves. And then let's see if we hide this stuff. What happens here? And then I'll do boundary surfaces, but I'll flatten it here. And we are still getting some overlap, so that didn't really work. So let's try that in a different way. We're gonna have to use a Boolean difference, but we'll do actually a solid difference. So we'll bring in these panels, brep A, and then we're gonna bring these brep B, and we're gonna make sure to flatten it here. And now we'll have these. So we're basically doing a Boolean difference between the panels and the new surfaces. And now we basically have those two patterns, and we have the ability now to let's say bring in a custom preview. So that took a little bit of time, but hopefully you were able to see how it works. Custom preview, then I'll double click here and bring a color swatch. Put this one to white, and do the same thing to the other one, but put a different color so we can see the difference between the two. And then we'll switch this to like a yellow, because that looks kind of nice. And then this one like a reddish. Okay, and what's cool about this pattern is that we can come back here to this one, rotate it around, and it's going to update automatically. Now we're still here working with a flat surface, so the next step is going to be to take this and actually give it some make it look 3D, or make it pop out a little bit, and that'll kind of give us give it a little bit more of a geometry that we can work with for a structure. So I will make sure to move some of this, and I have been people have been telling me that I move kind of fast, so I'm making sure now that I kind of slow down and go through all of the reasons as to why I do the things that I do. So I'll take this. These are going to be our subdivisions. We can subdivide it further, so I'm going to group this together. Go here to color, and here we have basically the next portion. Next, we're going to move on to making it look more 3D. Okay, so at this point with this, we can actually, take this stuff and kind of hide it, but what we're actually going to do is we're going to give this and extrude this to a point. So we're going to take these, we're going to spacebar, disable preview. That way we're just working with both of these. Now, what I am going to do is both of these, we need to get the exact center point. So for that, I double click and bring in the area component, and we're going to have to do this for both patterns. So I'll put one up here and I'll put one down here, and I'll bring this to the centroid. So basically get the center point. And now that I have the center point, I do want to move it up. So I want to move that out. So how am I going to do that? I have to move this point out perpendicular to the surface. So take this centroid, I'm going to move it. And typically it'll just go up, but that's not the direction that we want. We want it to be perpendicular to that. So we're actually going to bring in the amplitude. And this component will bring in all of those surfaces, and we'll put all those into the vector, and we'll see that it's actually moving it, but it's moving it in. So what are we going to do? We have to bring in, let's see, we're going to move it out 12, and it's moving it in, so we'll double click and bring in a negative component. So we'll go -12, and now it's moving out. So we could always, so I'm going to decrease the amount here, go to maybe like a 24 for the most, and then kind of decrease how much we're going out. And that way we can see that we have the old ones and the new ones. So let's go ahead and take those centroids, and it's actually disable the preview. And now that we have already this completed, we can do the exact same thing to the other surfaces. So I'll actually take all of this, copy it over. These surfaces are actually going to go right into the geometry there, and these are going to go into the vector. That way we're doing the same thing to the other ones, and we still have this, the ability to move the point, and the center point will update automatically. So I want to keep it here at 0.5. See if that works. There we go. Cool. Nice. So what we did is created these points that basically our surfaces are going to extrude to a point. So that's what we're going to do. Bring in the component called extrude point, and we'll bring in these surfaces first. So we'll start with these surfaces that down here. We'll do this surface, then this geometry, and there we have it. It extruded to that point. Now notice that the wires are dashed and these are dashed. That's why it works. If I were to flatten it, it would not work. So you may have to make sure both of these are basically grafted, which means that they come in with the information organized, and we can do the exact same thing to the one up here. So extrude to point these surfaces to this point. And these worked because they're organized in a different way, but they are matching and they do work. So if they don't work, it's going to be a matter of understanding how the information is coming in and how it's organized. But if you follow the steps in this way, you should have achieved the same thing. And I will share with you guys the script at the end of this, so you have, and you can kind of play around with it if you're not able to kind of achieve the same thing. So I created this other copy before. We don't really need this. So now this number, this slider, is going to be our extrusion point. So it's going to be what is going to allow for us to take that and actually extrude it to a point, either exaggerated or just super subtle. And of course we could always come back here and change this to give it like more of a funky look. And so that's what's awesome about Grasshopper, is that you have the ability to do some things that you really are not able to do in other programs, because you're always bound by you know, the stuff that you do. Like this one, it's fluid, like I can change anything on the fly if I want to. So hopefully you're able to understand it a little bit better by going over some of the tutorials that I have. And let's go here to a panel and be consistent and continue organizing the information. So this was going to be our point extrusion. And I'm going to organize this information actually down here. So I'll take all of this, bring it down here, and make sure to have this clean here by grouping it together. So group. Then I'll take this, color. Awesome. And actually I should do a copy of a panel here. And if you have your stuff outside of a group, you can take, I can go here to subdivisions, and then right click here. I think you could go add to group. I think this one, no, so you select this one, then add to group, and then this becomes a part of that group. So now everything is nice and organized, and we can move forward to the next portion, which is going to be we have this. We actually still need to hide some of this stuff back here. So spacebar, disable preview, and let's take these swatches and let's actually copy them over to this side and do the same thing with this, because now we don't really care to kind of preview this stuff back here. What we care about is previewing this, so previewing the colors of the new geometry. So I'll select this, spacebar, preview, and now we have that. And of course we could always come back and change it if we don't like the colors. Let's see here, we can do that, and then for the other one, switch it up a little bit. Cool. And of course, if you don't like that, you could just put all in one and then get rid of this. Cool. So that's the other way, if you just want everything to be one. And now what we could do is take this pattern and basically just do a basic wireframe structure in here to kind of let this pattern sit on top of something. So we have these extrusions, but we can basically hide all of this other stuff. So disable preview, and our next step is our inside structure. Okay, so at this point I was thinking maybe I do want to maybe increase the length of the structure a little bit to see what that looks like, and I think that'll look a lot better. Okay, so actually let me do 300 here. Cool. So now what I want to do is get that structure. So to do that, I'm actually going to take that surface that we created, so it's going to be one of our surfaces here, and this other difference one. So what I'm going to do with these two is actually join it together. So I'm going to do brep, join, and I'm actually going to disable all of this, so I can just look at what happens when I do this surface and this surface. And notice that when I go here, it says there's 45 values. This should actually close into 1. So when I right click here, go to flatten, we have one open BREP, and that's what we want, because now what I want to do when I do the structure, one of my favorite components here, because it makes it so easy to do a structure, it's going to be I think deconstruct BREP. No, it's going to be BREP edges. Yeah. So the reason why I like it is because it takes your BREP and it gives you the naked curves and the interior curves. So I used to think that was funny that they call them the naked ones, but it makes sense because they're on the outside. So they're the ones that you see on the outside, and then the interior, they're obvious, is going to be the interior ones. So I like that because I can take this and I can actually give it two different sizes to the wires. So I'll go to pipe here, and I'll actually do two of them. Now before you make a copy, I'll go to cap, round, then make a copy, then put the naked ones on top, the interior ones at the bottom, and they'll populate in a second. And if you want the outside structure to be wider than the inner one, let's say we'll go to a 2, and then we can do a division. So we could do, actually I can do instead of just doing a division, I'll do a division by 2. That way in the B component and the B input, it already has a 2. So 2 divided by 2 equals 1, which is going to be our interior ones are going to be 1. And our exterior are going to be 2. So no matter what we do for our exterior one, our interior one's always going to be half the size of the outside, which is good because it allows you to have a variety and have a little bit of a different size to the structure. And that is because our BREP edges basically takes those two and gives you the different ones. So I'll go here to 1. Or I can say, if we want to get a little bit more precise, we can say 1.5. And then the exterior is going to be thicker than the interior, and that's going to be nice once we bring back our preview here. Because now we can see that we have that structure throughout there. And we can give that a different color. So I'll take this, hold down Alt and make a quick copy, and then I can bring both of these in. Then hide all of this. So make a quick copy of this. It's going to be structure. Structure pipe radius, and then this one we can change it to something that looks more a little bit darker to contrast it. And at the end, group this together, color, and organize our information. Then we can take these, add to group, and so far we have a nice structure that has basically a wireframe base, and then it has this extrusion that we can always come back here and make it more drastic or less drastic depending on what you want at the end. And we do have some things here in the way, so we have to take this, disable preview, and that's going to be basically the conclusion for this one. And if it looks too regular, don't forget that we always have the ability to do this, to just switch it up. And it's a good way, it's a good thing to do at the end of your script, because if you take a look at the end and it doesn't work, then you know that you have an issue. But I think here we have a interesting, nice result at the end. And so I will make sure to have this saved and share it with you. And yeah, if you like this tutorial and you like what I'm doing here, please make sure to let me know. And if you have any ideas, let me know, and make sure to subscribe for future videos. I actually did a Rhino render, and this is what it looks like. So I feel like that looks pretty good. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. How like actually what you could do with just the basic Rhino render. So I didn't even use V-Ray for this. So if you are interested in learning how to set up something like this, let me know, so I could do a tutorial like that if you guys are interested.